that if we want to be the captain of change in our own life, the very core of what makes us capable of doing that is personal motivation. So there's two things.
Opinions don't define your reality. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Podcast with SHEILA, the podcast that is spreading positivity around the world by sharing inspiring real-life experiences. Today's guest, David Edwards, worked in healthcare for 35 years across 3 continents, where he gained insight on how to become the captain of your life. After serving low-income and vulnerable people, today we are going to be discussing his life journey as a health worker and all the challenges and lessons he learned whilst on the job, as well as his research that led him to write the groundbreaking book, Knew You, Who Knew? Hello, David, and welcome to Podcast with SHEILA. Before we kick the ball rolling, who is David? Where does he come from? Stuff like that, so that our audience will get to know exactly who our guest is for today. Yeah.
You know, I grew up a pretty average life. I have 2 brothers, an older brother and younger brother. We moved around a lot as kids, wherever the work was, we went. But I enjoyed my childhood. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and I got a bachelor's degree in business. And actually, it was while I was going to school, I started working first in healthcare. And I had a rare privilege of working for a small but growing community health center in the Seattle, Washington area. So in the United States, it's on the West Coast. I did that for 6 years, and I grew with that organization. I think they tripled in size during that 6 years. And, we kept adding new locations and finding more needs that were not met. And it was a wonderful period. But there was something that was a challenge for me in that I lived in the north end of this big city and my work was in the south end of the big city. So my drive every day was about an hour and a half each direction. Wow. So I spent 3 hours commuting, and we liked living up north. My wife had family up there, and we didn't really want to move south. And at some point, I realized as we had our first child on the way, was it our first or our second? I realized that I was working away from home 10 or 12 hours a day. And then I was starting to go in on Saturdays more often because we were growing and there was just more stuff to do. And I was their finance director at the time. And I just realized this is not consistent with who I am. There's things that we do, but then more fundamentally, there's who am I? Yeah. And fundamentally, I believe that I'm a child of God. Yeah. So I'm an eternal being who's on this mortal journey that we call our life. Yeah. And I knew, though, that my family was, next to my faith in God, was like the most important thing to me. And I wasn't even going to see my daughters grow up. And it's not like I was making a lot of money, not that that would matter, but I decided to leave that job. And they're good people, good purpose, good work, but it just wasn't consistent with my own closely held values. And so I left and I got a job closer to home, which was great, except I hated that job. No. and that happens sometimes because, sometimes we work just because you've got to work. It's great if you love your work, right? If you love what you're doing and it's important and, you get satisfaction from it. But sometimes you just got to work because you got to pay your bills and, and that kind of stuff. So, those are both realities and they're both okay. So I'm going to skip because I've been around for a few years now. And I'm going to skip about 30 years, but I worked in healthcare that rest of my career. And I've done some fun things. I worked with elderly. and people with dementia, which was very rewarding, very challenging, but very rewarding. And always on the administrative side. I've never been like a direct caregiver, except for like, family, but or friends or people, that we might be serving. But I've worked in cardiology, so cardiovascular care, research and education. I've worked in tribal health in Alaska with Native American groups, Alaska Natives. I worked in Nigeria for a while and commissioned a hospital in Ibadan, Nigeria. Anyways, I've been able to do some really fun and interesting things. And so, like this mask, is this video audio?
I was going to ask you. I see a few bits of African, touch in your background. And I think the shirt you're wearing also has an African touch, if I'm right, from the little that I can see. So I was going to ask you what the connection was, but when you mentioned Nigeria, I got it. That will probably be from, there.
Well, I love this. When I was in Nigeria, I just loved learning about the culture of that area. And this would have been the largest group was a Yoruba tribe, which was, a very large group of people. Anyways, and with this mask, I love this mask. So I was talking to the artist, and it is basically like masks, big ones and small ones, all playing instruments. And the idea, he calls it a peace mask. He said, we got some big tribes, we've got like 400 small tribes. And we all have to learn to get along with each other, even though we're all a little different. We have a little bit different story. But if we can play music and get along with each other, there's harmony in society. And so I just loved the idea of that, and then brought that one home. So anyways, that was I just have these marvelous experiences, which have been a blessing to me. But a few years ago, so 2018, I can't believe that was 4 years ago now, I was the CEO of a rural community health center. And, just by the way, so my kids are grown. I guess that should be obvious. They're in their 30s, and they, live in other cities, and we miss them most of the time terribly. But I've been married for 37 years.
Great. Congratulations.
A week and a half from now, I've been married for 37 years to the same woman who I love dearly, Linda. And so anyways, so I was working as a CEO of this rural health center. We served a large migrant and the seasonal farm workers. We had lots of cherries and various kinds of crops and things out in that area. And, well, we were very successful, I would say. As an organization, as a nonprofit organization, over the 4 years roughly that I'd been there, we had gone from being financially really struggling to financially very sustainable. Really good place. We had doubled in size. We had expanded the types of services that we offered, adding, for example, behavioral health services that we had never done before. And we had done a lot of different things, which I was proud of, not the least of which was we had eliminated any disparities in health outcomes between our majority population and minority population, our largest minority population at least. And I was very proud of that because that was not easy to do. But anyways, it was a wonderful place. I enjoyed the people I worked with, and we had done really well. We had good quality of care. People wanted to come see us. We've gotten so busy that I moved out of my office into a closet, and then I moved out of my closet to put 3 dentists in the closet because we were just out of space. There was no room. And so we were in a position finally where we could consider, building a new health center like that would be twice as big. And that would be built in a way that better supported this model of integrated whole person care that we had developed. So the idea that you, SHEILA, and I, and everybody listening or watching, was born whole, integrated, complete,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We weren't
Yeah.
born in bits and parts.
No.
It's all connected,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
when we're feeling a little anxious
Mm-hmm.
or a little down, right, in our brain, it affects our body.
Body. Yeah. Yeah.
And when we're feeling like we've got COVID or something, you know, and we're feeling
Yeah.
down and sick, you know, it affects our mind
Exactly.
and our kind of mental status, right?
Exactly.
It's all
Exactly.
connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Something I learned, you know, working with dentists is that if I have oral health, if I have like gum disease,
It affects the body.
it actually can negatively impact my diabetes or my heart disease or anything else that I've got going on. Because we're all connected, right? We're all integrated.
Yeah.
And so we had built this model of primary care around you and me and everyone else as a whole person, which was very successful and effective in helping people manage their health. But I knew we were missing something because we had these great people, we had a great clinical model, we had a new building which was going to support this clinical model much better. We had all these things going for us, but this first epiphany I had was that unless we can help the individual patient to fulfill their role as the captain of the care team, to be more successful, in other words, in all the hours that they're outside of the clinic, unless we can help them be more successful with that, we will fail to make the substantial difference that we think that we could make and that we desire to make. Does that make sense?
It does. So if I'm getting it right, that was what led you to write your book, is it?
Well, it absolutely is, because I started down asking these questions and researching, you know, well, what does it mean? And I started studying change models. We had some therapists at the organization, and they told me, Dave, there's these different theories of change, and we're human beings, so nothing is simple. It's not like here's the one way that people change, and that's the only thing that we got to know, right? Unfortunately, there are a number of different theories around how people change. But I was a finance guy for a lot of years, and so I built a spreadsheet. And I listed out, you know, kind of the steps or the phases of each of these change models. And this was the second epiphany, that if we want to be the captain of change in our own life, the very core of what makes us capable of doing that is personal motivation. So there's two things that are key generically. The one is I got to know how to do something, right? How do I do a podcast? How do I, set the table if I work at a restaurant? How do I fix a car? How do I, whatever it is I want to do? And there's a lot of that stuff. Well, we go out on the internet, there's a lot of people that talk about how do you get a job? How do you do better? How do you get a raise? How do you, et cetera, right? But there's very little about why. Why do I want this? Why am I moving in this direction? And so really what personal motivation gets at is, why do I want to do anything? Why do I get up in the morning? Why do I show up at work every day? Why am I nice to people instead of cranky? Or why am I cranky instead of nice, right? This question of why is what that gets at. And that turns out is at least as important, if not more important, than how. And so I started diving into this idea of personal or intrinsic motivation to say, I've been in business for 30 years. Motivation to me, and I have several books on my bookshelf, that people have written, people much smarter than me, and said, this is what motivation is about, to get your employees to do what you want them to do. Because that's what businesses are interested in, right? They want you to do what, you're there to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not bad. But unfortunately, it doesn't get it to the level, the personal level, that helps me as an individual human being to understand myself and to be more successful as a human being. It might help my business be more successful, but it doesn't help me personally. And that's what I was really interested in, because I knew that to help people to become the captain of their life and the captain of their own healthcare journey, that this was going to be really important. So I started studying personal motivation, and I found out that there's 3 core areas and about 10 principles that help us uncover our personal motivation. One of the first principles, or the very first principle, I believe it, and I think of this more of a natural metaphor. So we think of a fruit tree, whatever your favorite fruit is.
Yeah.
It has roots, and it has a trunk, and it has branches, and leaves, and eventually, right, in the summer usually, or fall, that tree bears fruit.
Yeah.
But it's got to develop and build all of those, that infrastructure, all those foundations, if you will, in order to have that fruit.
Yeah.
And so we think of, how to do things is like, how do I have more fruit? But why do I do things has to do with those foundations, like the foundations of our life. So if we think about people, if we think about the roots of the tree, what is that for people? Well, that is our values, our core personal values that we make explicit. And this is what the research surprised me, was that 80% of us have never made our own core personal values explicit. And that's not a vague sense of, it's important to be honest, I love my family, which are fine, right? This is all good. But to sit down and go through a little bit of effort, it doesn't cost anything, but we can go through a little bit of effort, which is the first chapter of the book, and it just steps you through the process. And it helps you identify your top 5 core values. These are the values that, if push comes to shove, you're going to really stick with it. So if I think I'm honest, and I think that's a core value, but I'm driving down the road a little too fast, and policemen, lights go off, and they pull me over, and they say, "You were speeding." If I say, "No, I was not, but I know I was," maybe honesty is an aspirational value. Maybe it's not the core value I thought it was, right? Because our core values we hold to under any circumstance. They are independent of our circumstances. So the process it takes a couple of hours is all, and it helps you kind of make those things clear. And then the process of making it explicit entails 3 steps. The first step is that you define it. So if I have honesty as a core value, I have to describe it. What does honesty mean to me? Now, that's not what honesty means to SHEILA, or to my mom, or to my neighbor, or my companion or spouse, or whatever, right? It is for me. What does that mean? This isn't a big, long, full-page essay like you have to be afraid of from school. This is a sentence or 2, very simple. What does this mean to me? The second step is, what does that look like in my behavior? So, like, if I am living this value, what does it look like? And again, just a sentence or 2. And then the third thing, the final thing, is I describe, again, very briefly, so what? Why am I better off for living that value that I have just defined? Why am I better off as a result? And what this process does is it helps take our values from a background and it brings it to the front. It brings it to the forefront. And this surprised the heck out of me. But people have researched this. And the benefits that we enjoy by doing this include having a stronger sense of my purpose and of the meaning in my life. And we could all use more of that, couldn't we?
We can, yeah.
Absolutely. It also helps me to be more clear in my thinking. So I avoid fuzzy thinking. I avoid languishing and apathy, that sense of like, I don't know why I would even bother, right? So we avoid those things and we have greater focus, greater intentionality, and greater well-being. that sense that my life is moving in the direction I'd like it to. And it's really for these reasons, it's the core foundation of being the captain of my own life, is to understand and make explicit my own values.
Wow. So
does that make sense so far?
It does. So in brief, when you're doing anything, you should think of why. It should be more of why am I doing it? Even though the how to do it is important, but it looks like the why should come first, then you find out how to do it, if I'm right. And it looks like
perfect.
It looks like lately, from the stories I hear around the world, I want to cite an example to make it much clearer to anybody who is listening. These days, the young folks, if I hear these stories more in our African communities, and I believe it's everywhere though, but the young folks try to live beyond their means, if I can say, some of them, most of them. So they see somebody who's aged right, worked well to obtain the kind of things they have, and they want to have the same thing. And you should, first of all, they don't even know why they want it. It's just because they see somebody having it, they want it, and then they go for it. So it's a misplaced value, if I should say. They don't even know why, but they want it, and they look for all the dubious means to get it, as in when they are going for how to obtain it. They look for the wrong means to get it. So in the first place, when you need something, when you think you want something, you should first find why you think you need it. Because when you dissect it all, you may in the end realize that you may not need it. If I have it, it doesn't mean you should have it.
Right. Well, it's interesting. This isn't a great example as we've lived a little more life. And we said, I want this thing, or I want that thing, anything, that we want. What we find is that we've attached greater meaning to that thing than is really there. Yeah. So if I wanted a certain watch or a certain, pair of glasses or certain a piece of art or a car or whatever it is, right? As soon as I get it, I'm really thrilled. I'm excited. It's like Christmas morning, right? Yeah. I open the box and, wow, this is great. I'm really fulfilled. And then the next day, you're back asking, well, no, I want something else now. But as soon as we attach those kinds of feelings to things, we are in trouble, right? And so this process that I outline in the book, starting with values, helps us align our lives with the things that are truly valuable and important to us. And it's less about what I'm going to do. And doing is important. I don't want to, put that down at all. But what it does is it builds this foundation or this core on which we can build solidly of who am I? Why do I want to do these things? And how does it help me as much in who I am becoming as it is in the stuff I'm getting?
Is that why the book is targeted at a particular audience? Because as you're talking now, things are beginning to come together. And I think yesterday I saw a TikTok video and the lady was trying to justify why rich people don't wear labels, but average people or low income people, or should I say poor people, I don't know which, wear labels because they don't have it, but they feel that when they put on labels, which are very expensive garments and stuff, they feel that they become part of it. But the rich is already rich. He doesn't need to prove himself to anybody because he knows he's rich. So he'll just go for, very casual, no name at all. And that is why the rich is always rich, because they will not spend their money on unnecessary things, if I should say in quote. But people who don't have it, even though they don't have it, will go for loans, will do whatever it is to obtain those expensive things just to prove that if they can wear it, then it means they are rich, which obviously might not, in most cases, might not be the case. So is that why the book is targeted at a particular audience? Because they've not got the reason why they do things. They've not got it yet.
Yeah, well, and most of us don't. I mean, that's what the research tells us, right? Is that we don't. And here's the difference. I mean, and this is a difference between being rich and not.
Yeah.
You know, those of us who have to work every day versus those who don't, right?
Yeah.
It is that if I have a lot of money, and let's say I make some bad choices.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I make some bad choices.
Yeah.
I usually have like a manager.
Yeah.
I have an attorney.
Yeah.
I have a business partner. I have resources that help me dig out of this problem that I've gotten myself into.
Yeah.
But if you're an everyday average person who's got to show up to work in order to, you know, just barely pay the bills, if you develop some bad habits, the consequences are much more severe.
Yeah.
Right? They're much more severe because we don't have the resources to hire all this help or to carry us through to a better day, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't have those things, we are more accountable for what we do.
Yeah.
And we suffer the consequences of those kinds of decisions. And so I wrote the book because, and it's not fair. I mean, you know, but I mean, we have to recognize that life isn't fair. And what the book is trying to do is arm you, if you will, as a normal everyday person with some principles, because that's your solid thing. You know, those principles don't change over time. So they're solid. You can hang on to those with confidence, and some skills, so ways to apply those principles in your normal everyday life that will help you avoid regret, help you lead your own life, not the life, you know, that you think you see on TikTok videos or YouTube or what's on the telly
social
or
media.
You know, the television or whatever, right? These are facades, and they look attractive, but they're not real life, right?
Yeah.
Your life is real.
Yeah.
And so this is going to help you say, what is important to me? What are the skill sets that I need to both accomplish things I want to do and become who I want to become over the course of my life that will, in the long run and in the short run, frankly, bring me more joy, more success, which we have to be careful about. Not success like you see in the advertisements, you know, where you're on an eternal vacation on your yacht. You know, that may be success, but for most of us, that is not. That is somebody else's vision of success, right? So what does success mean to me, right? So we make it personal again. Because then you're grounded. And no matter how much external success you have, right, it helps you to remain grounded. Because we want to be that balanced person who maybe does really well, but remains grounded and saying, no, I'm just another human being. I've been fortunate. I've worked hard. And I've got these results from that. This is great. But I'm not going to get big in my head and think I'm, you know, all that fancy, because you know what? There's all kinds of reasons and circumstances that led to that success that are beyond myself. And I recognize that. And then when we're down, you know, the other side is we just never quite get the kind of material success that we would like or that we need even. And we just struggle. And we're not sure, you know, how we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole that we're in. These foundations serve us just as well there. And what they do, if nothing else, is they help us to avoid a catastrophic failure in our lives. So, anyways, and so whether things are going well or things are not going well, the principles and the skills are equally beneficial and equally useful. So think of our tree example. If I'm a fruit tree and I've got weak roots and trunk, right? So I've not developed I've not aligned my life with the principles and developed the skills, right? So I got little roots and I got skinny trunk and it's kind of brittle, right? So then when the storms of life come, what's going to happen, more likely to happen to that tree, right? It's going to blow over. It's going to break. Big chunks of it are going to fall off, right? Things like that will happen. The branches don't have the strength to hold up the snow or whatever in the winter, right? And so it has a catastrophic failure. Now, the tree in a good year, let's say it's a really good year, everything's perfect, the sun's right, the water's right, but that weak tree, is it going to produce as much as if it had a strong roots and trunk and branches? It won't produce as much, right? Because it's weak.
It is.
It doesn't have those foundations to carry the weight of all that fruit.
Exactly.
And so, no matter what, good seasons or bad, having the strong foundations serves us well.
That's true. That's true. And the example you made over there, I think it really, really makes sense. It totally makes sense. Just because you mentioned it, can I ask you, what does success mean to you in your view? What is success?
So there was a radio personality from many years ago named Earl Nightingale.
Okay.
And I really thought he was a pretty wise person. And so I borrowed this from him.
Good.
I'll paraphrase this. This is really close, but maybe not exact. Okay. But he said basically, success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. You notice that he didn't say it's getting here or it's achieving that.
Yeah.
Right? Success is progress. Along a continuum. It's kind of like health. And people don't think about this very often. But if I'm way off on my left-hand side here, for me this is my left, and I think that's sick, and I go to the middle of my face, and I say that's healthy. That's normally how we think of things, right?
Yeah.
You're sick or you're healthy.
Yeah.
But what I want to suggest is that we need to move this hand way off to the right-hand side and say, this in the middle is simply a lack of illness. And healthy, in fact, is a continuum from there all the way out as far as I could take it.
Okay.
So I could lack disease in my body, but I can't walk more than 2 blocks.
Yeah.
Right? I'm healthy, quote unquote. But I could be even more healthy. So there's a continuum, right, along which I could progress.
What inspires you in life?
What inspires me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's probably a few things regularly. I think my children, my oldest, I think she'll watch this and correct me, but I think she's 35 now.
Okay.
And I see them do things that I know will make their life better. Disciplines she's developed, kindness to others, her desire to be of service and share her talents. And both of my girls, they're both much more talented than I am. And it brings me, it's inspiring to me to see that the next generation is learning and growing, and sometimes they make some mistakes, and they've got to live with those, and they have some serious challenges sometimes in their lives. They've had some serious challenges, and to see them kind of, we have 2 kinds of challenges. There's things that we persevere through, which, could take a long time maybe. Yeah. And then there's things that we resile through that are shorter term, but sometimes even more disruptive, right? Yeah. And so they're developing the skills to succeed in life despite those kinds of challenges, both the longer term and the short ones. So that inspires me. It says the next generation, and both of my girls, I think my oldest will likely never have children. Not that they didn't want children, but that, she has a medical condition which doesn't allow it to happen. Yeah. We thought our younger daughter might be the same, so she's 32 or 33. I think she'll be 33 in November. But she's pregnant now, which is a joyful thing. And it'll be our first grandchild. But that's inspiring to me. Yeah. They're married to men who love them dearly, and they love their husbands dearly. I'm inspired by nature. Yeah. We have a little backyard, and we had some quail. It's a kind of bird, and they had babies, and the babies were literally like 1 inch tall. And so mom and dad, they were waddling along, you know, like a bird does, and they had this row of little babies. They felt like they were hidden because they were under the bushes over there. But they had like 6 or 8 little tiny babies, 1 inch tall, all scurrying along trying to follow. And then the mom and dad jumped up on like a little cinder block, maybe 4 inches high, and the little babies couldn't do it. Because they're only 1 inch tall, and they don't fly yet. They can't jump that high, right? And they had to work out a way. But it was inspiring to watch, you know, like in nature, and they're trying to make a living, if you will, right? And they run into some difficulties, and then they overcome them. And I see those kinds of things, and it brings joy to me to know that I'm able to be a part of this. And you know, we have our seasons, and I love the 4 seasons, and these transitions of life that allow us new opportunities to experience something that's a little different.
You know, as you were talking yesterday, 2 days ago, I did a recording with one lady, and my God, I love her so much. Meeting her for the first time, and the connection and everything was so good. And as we were talking, I think we had just mentioned something that is quite similar, in line with what you just said, as in everybody has an assignment on earth, and we go through our daily challenges. Is supposed to shape us and prepare us for our assignments. So somebody's challenge may be bigger than the other person, simply because the assignment is quite bigger, and they need to go through a bigger and a tougher challenge to prepare them for the bigger assignment. So as you were talking, I got that, it came back to my mind as, you know, a reminder of what we were talking about previously. So that was what I got. I thought I should chip it in. But another question I want to ask that wasn't part of the questions that I prepared today was, because you had mentioned that you've been married for 37 years. Well, is it 37? And I feel that is so inspiring.
37, and on September the 3rd or the 6th? September the 6th.
Wow. And I think that 37 is, being married that long is very, very inspiring. So inspiring, so encouraging. Because lately people can't marry that long, and people don't even want to try. So I wanted to find out what kept it going for you. If there's anything you could share with us, you know, and we can keep it in our pockets as we go along too.
So in our faith, we believe that men and women can be married forever. Right? And so that marriage can endure, you know, beyond death. And so we have the sense that our relationship is not just for mortal time, but it's forever. And so as we have challenges, and we've definitely had our challenges, we take a step back. It allows us to take a step back and say, on what principles is our marriage built? You know, why are we married? You know, what is our commitment to each other? Is it just until it's inconvenient, or until I get old and bald, or fat, or you know, I lose my job, or what? Right? And it helps bring us back to the principles upon which our marriage is built, which is that we're eternal beings, and we'll be together forever. So we better learn how to work together and align our efforts, you know, so that we're moving together and not apart from each other. And there's lots of little things you do, but I mean, that's really the foundation of it, is that that there are temptations and challenges in life, but our commitment is forever. And if you don't believe in God, I think you could have a similar result and say, we're committed to being together, as they say in a lot of marriage vows, right? Through happiness, through sadness, through sickness and health, through poverty and prosperity, right? And it's interesting because these are all circumstances. All of these circumstances are common to the human condition, whether we're in Ghana or from Ghana or in Nottingham or Spokane, Washington, or, you know, wherever we're at. these conditions, these circumstances are common.
Yeah.
Right? There is inequity. There's challenges. But as we align our lives with enduring principles in our relationships, in our personal growth and joy, we will have greater success.
Yeah.
As we attach and hold on to those things.
Yeah.
And so we think about life and say, I think about a marriage. What is our commitment to each other? Right? What is our expectation of each other?
Yeah.
And then how do we nurture each other? We think about like a garden, right? I like these natural metaphors, like cherry trees and gardens and stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't like go to the garden and say, do this.
Yeah.
And if I say do this enough times, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
No, right? If I want my tomatoes to grow, I've got to make sure there's water on them.
Yeah.
I nurture it.
Yeah.
I make sure there's fertilizer when it needs it, right? I make sure it gets enough sunlight.
Yeah.
I am nurturing the result that I want.
Wow.
So if I want a relationship with my spouse that is mutually supportive and respectful, that recognizes that we're in this for the long haul, right? Then how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, how we might resist temptations. You know, when you were younger, when I was younger, you're still pretty young, so when I was younger, and maybe somebody thinks you're attractive.
Yeah.
And, there's a temptation there. You go, wait a minute, no, I'm in a committed relationship, and this is what is important to me. Again, right, get back to my values.
Yeah.
And this is how I look at my relationship. So that's really not consistent with who I am becoming with my spouse. And I know that it's going to bring regret and sadness to my life and to everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so when we have these foundations built, we can avoid those kinds of things. And oh my gosh, regret is useful sometimes, but I don't think it's anything that you would ever seek. Like, I want more regret in my life, right? We just don't want that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is a very long answer to a simple question. I think you just remember why you got married and what your marriage is all about, and those commitments that you made, and then nurturing one another. And if we can do that, I think we can have a very long, successful, happy marriage. And it doesn't end, right? It's all things in life that are meaningful. They don't end. There's joy in the process. Like we were talking about earlier about walking 2 blocks and then 4 and then 8, right? And maybe you walk a mile. It's the joy of the process, right? It's this progress. It's not necessarily walking a mile. That's one milestone or one step. But that's not where the joy is. The joy is in the capability that I developed to do something that serves me and that allows me to be doing other things that I enjoy doing. And so it's that joy in the journey that people talk about. And I think it's absolutely true.
My God, this brings us back to your book, as in why you do something. And I think for this reason, everybody will need your book then. When you're trying to navigate through life, you get to a point where you feel you're stuck. And then you need to reflect and, and ask yourself, why am I doing this, or why did I start this? And it applies to everything else. So I think that is one of the factors why everybody needs to get this book, because it kinds of help us get back on track anytime we think we've missed the road and we are making bad decisions. We sit down, reflect, ask ourselves why, do we need that? And I like it just because we started from somewhere, brought marriage in, which was not part of it, but we've been able to intertwine or bring them together to the same thing we have been discussing since we started the podcast, and I really like it. Just before we wrap up, what would your final message be to our listeners?
I think my message would be that you and your life, no matter how common it is, are important. You are important. Your life is important. Your life matters. It makes a difference. And as you align your life with enduring principles, you will enjoy greater success. Now, that does not mean rich or famous. You just kind of write those words off. It could happen. But pursuing those is usually a fool's errand. Consider what is most important to you in your life. Pursue becoming the person that will naturally and normally accomplish those kinds of things. And then set about it. Put in the effort day to day, and your life will matter. And it is important. And you can enjoy happiness and success as a human being in a very, very common and normal everyday life. In fact, that's what most of us get to do.
Yeah.
How wonderful that is.
Yeah. Oh, lately I've made it a point to be happy and then to enjoy peace. Those are the two things I'm looking for. So anything that doesn't make me happy or give me peace, I'm running away from it. Like I'm seriously running away from it. Because as you grow, your values change. You get to set proper values, align them properly with age. It comes with age. I don't know if it's with everybody, but then it comes with certain things you used to value years back. You don't value those things again. And for me, I've narrowed it down to peace and happiness. Those two basically, they come on top of my list. If anything around me or in my life is not giving me what those two should give me, I'm running away from it. And I like it that we've been able to narrow the whole thing down to this bit here where you just wrapped up for us. And I would like to say a massive thank you for finally coming, making it up on Podcast with SHEILA today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Wow. If you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 61 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing seasoned guests with inspiring real life stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Whilst at it, please drop us a rating. We have a video presentation of this episode on our YouTube channel. Just search for Podcast with SHEILA on YouTube and you'd find us. Our prayer for you this week is to be able to discover your true identity and purpose in life. Until we meet again, have a brilliant week.